What's your position on artificial intelligence, potential positive and negative outcomes, and general sense of what it will mean?
Well, my position basically is we better get our act together before the giants show up. And they're like knocking at the door right now. So you better build your ark. We're whipping up some things in the lab that will make everything that's come so far look like nothing's happened at all yet. And that's not like next year, that's tomorrow, that's now. So we're going to have a lot of things to contend with. And you know, they're very promising. The only thing that's stopping that is time. Like, it's the possibility of doing that's right there. We're going to be able to build, we can already build incredibly intelligent systems. The tech is already in place. And so I have no idea what that's going to mean. You know, and it could easily lead us astray. So here's something that's going to happen in the next year. So imagine now you're a lonesome guy and you can get a digital friend, a woman. She can talk to you like ChatGPT talks to you and listen like ChatGPT listens to you, which is maybe, if you're really lonesome and alienated, more than anyone has ever listened to you in your life. And then soon, she'll not only listen to you as a text interface, but she'll be a fully rendered 3D, well, let's say 2D photorealistic, fully rendered animation, indistinguishable from a genuine image of a person, image of a genuine person, right? Is you'll be able to turn your virtual girlfriend into your virtual sex partner, and who knows what that'll do, right? And then the next thing after that is you'll be able to put that into a robot. And that's just one thing that's going to happen, maybe not even the most surreal thing. You know, pretty soon we'll be contending with the fact that someone will be able to generate a photorealistic version of Donald Trump and have him say something absolutely reprehensible and spread it everywhere just before election night. And there'll be a real confusion about whether he said it or didn't. So what do we do when our representations of reality can be falsified? The bigger the toy, the smarter you better be to use it. So that's worth thinking about, because we're coming up with some pretty damn big toys. And what did my friend Jonathan Pajot said again? He said recently, I told you about him, this deep, deep religious thinker. He's something. He said, we're going to see giants walk the earth again. And you think, well, what does that mean? Technology is moving so quickly that even those who are on top of it can't keep up. So, and I would say we better get our act together, because we could make this world quite the heavenly place, but there's a lot more pathways to hell than there are to heaven. You know, by the time World War II hit, we were pretty damn technologically powerful. We could take out a lot of the world in a very short period of time, but that was nothing compared to what we can do now. So we're really at a crossroads. We could have everything we could dream of if we were careful, but we could have a nightmare beyond contemplation if we're not. And so I would say, also, as we become technologically more powerful, every single individual becomes more powerful. And that means the corruption of the individual starts to become more and more a world destabilizing force. You should know this. There are things coming down the pipeline on the artificial intelligence front that are just going to make your hair stand on end within the next year, because there is so much transformation going on in that domain. And that's been the case particularly for the last 6 months, that it's almost unimaginable. You're going to see things you just can't possibly. How many of you clap? How many of you know what ChatGPT is? Okay. So not very many. So I'll tell you what ChatGPT is, just so you know, because you need to know this. And I don't know what sort of technological revolution this is. Gutenberg press level. I went and interacted with it. It's an AI system, artificial intelligence system. It basically is trained on, well, a massive corpus of spoken or of text. So it's derived its models of the world from the analysis of human speech, essentially. It isn't using real world data yet, but that will be happening. Okay, so now we have an AI model that can extract a model of the world from the entire corpus of language. All right, and it's smarter than you. And it's going to be a hell of a lot smarter than you in 2 years. So you can get ready for that too. You know, you hear babies have no theory of mind. It's like, yeah, no, they can imitate. That's pretty bloody amazing, man. Like, you haven't seen robots that can do that yet. Although there are robots now that you can teach by moving their arms. You move their arms, and then they'll do it. And so you can actually program them by moving them, and then they'll just repeat it. And so they're getting damn close to imitation, because they're going to be imitating each other as well as us. And they're going to do it so fast, you just won't be able to believe it. So that's coming. The organism adapts itself by materially constructing new forms to fit themselves into those of the universe, whereas intelligence extends this creation by constructing mental structures which can be applied to those of the environment. You know, the guys that are building the autonomous cars, like, they don't think they're building autonomous cars. They know perfectly well what they're doing. They're building fleets of mutually intercommunicating autonomous robots, and each of them will be able to teach the other because their nervous system will be the same. And when there's 10 million of them, when one of them learns something, all 10 million of them will learn it at the same time. So they're not going to have to be very bright before they're very, very, very smart. Because us, you know, we'll learn something, you have to imitate it. It's like, God, that's hard. Or I have to explain it to you, and you have to understand it, and then you have to act it out. We're not connected wirelessly with the same platform. But robots, they are. And so once those things get a little bit smart, they're not going to stop at a little bit smart for very long. They're going to be unbelievably smart. And they're imitating the hell out of us right now, too, because we're teaching them how to understand us. Every second of every day, the net is learning what we're like. It's watching us, it's communicating with us, it's imitating us, and it's going to know, it already knows in some ways more about us than we know about ourselves. When people were first developing models of artificial intelligence, they thought they'd be able to develop machines that sort of modeled the world, and then figured out how to act in the world, sort of abstractly, and then would, after they figured out how to act in the world, would then act in the world. But that proved to be impossible, as you can tell, because we don't have it. And so some robotics engineers, such as Rodney Brooks, who worked at MIT, started building robots from the bottom up. He made these little mindless robots that really didn't even have a central processor that were action-oriented. So like the first things he built were these little insect-like things that could skitter away from light. That's all they could do. You turn on a light, poof, they'd go find some dark. And it's as if, so imagine the world to that robot was a binary place. It was either a light place or a dark place. And then you might say, well, what did light or dark mean to this little robot? And then you have to ask yourself, well, what does meaning mean? And that's a very good question. It's one that Piaget answers. Meaning means, to that little robot, move to a different place. So light to that robot meant move to a different place. So what the robot, in a sense, was doing was transforming one form of information, light versus dark, into another form. Well, some of you have seen Big Dog. If you've seen Big Dog, look up DARPA, D-A-R-P-A. How many of you have seen Big Dog? How many of you are terrified by Big Dog? Yes. Big Dog is this robot that's being developed by the US Army that is about this big, and it's four-legged, it's got a head, and it can run like faster than you, and it can run in snow, and it can run on ice, and it can run up hills, and if you kick it, it balances and stands back up, and hypothetically it's going to be used to transport like the heavy things that soldiers have to carry, but you know, don't believe that, that's a stupid idea. Once these things can ambulate by themselves, and they can already follow each other because now they have visual systems, arming them is going to be a very simple matter. And so the probability that we'll have unbelievably super fast robots that can shoot you in 10 years is like, to me, as far as I can tell from the development, is absolutely certain. When the robots shoot at you, not only will they shoot at where you are, but they'll shoot at the 6 places that they calculate you're most likely to dart to, and they will never miss. So that's a lovely thing to think about. I don't think it's within the scope of anyone's vision to predict even what's likely to happen over the next 40 years, because the rate of technological advance is so insane that in some sense all bets are off. And I really mean that. You know, I have a variety of contacts in Silicon Valley, and there are people there that I've been communicating with who believe that it's already within their power to build a an AI machine that will have higher computational capacity than the human brain. That's within 5 years. Now that assumes that they've got the computational capacity of the brain properly calculated, and that's not necessarily the case. But even if they're out by a factor of 10, that's not many iterations past that. Now maybe we don't understand the brain at all. That's certainly possible. But it isn't just the rapid increase in computational power that's doubling so quickly. I don't know if how many of you watch the Boston Dynamics videos? So how many of you don't know what I'm talking about? Okay, so one of the things I would highly recommend is that you go home and go to YouTube and look up Boston Dynamics, because it's the most advanced robotics company in the world, and it was a DARPA project, so an American defense company, and they were bought by Google 5 years ago, and they had pretty damn impressive robots 5 years ago. They were autonomous, and they could make their way over rough terrain, including snow, up hills. If they slipped on the ice, they could right themselves. If you pushed them over, they could put themselves back up. And that's not joystick controlled. That was all autonomous. And they ran on gasoline-powered motors and were capable of autonomous action for an hour and a half or so. And I looked at the last iteration, and it's a small robot about this big, and it has a hand that looks like a head, and it's so sophisticated that it can gyrate to music spontaneously, and it can keep its head in the same place. And you know, there's something very strange about robots that people don't generally think about. Some people do. Imagine you have a robot, and it can learn a few things through imitation, and we already have robots that can do that, because you can program a robot, industrial robot that's worth about $20,000. You can move its arm the way you want it to move its arm, and then it will move its arm that way. So imitation is coming up very rapidly, and the capacity to autonomously learn is already there to some degree. Let's say you have a robot that can learn a little bit, not much, but then let's say you have 20 million of them, and they're all exactly the same, and they have exactly the same architecture. And so what that means, as soon as one robot learns something, then all 20 million of them learn it. And so if each robot is learning one thing a day, then the whole herd is learning 20 million things a day. And so once we hit a certain threshold, the rate of increase in robotic intelligence is going to be just something that we can't even comprehend. I talked to the people at Tesla who ran the autonomous car division, and they know perfectly well they weren't creating autonomous cars, because an autonomous car isn't a car, it's a robot. And it's not just a robot, it's a fleet of robots, and it's a fleet of intelligent robots. And some of the functions that it will perform will be the functions of a car. But to think about that as a car, you're just confused. It's like to think of a car as a horseless carriage. The person who ran the division told me that they'd already had plans instantiated so that all the Tesla cars map the roads, and they're mapping them at an increasingly high level of resolution, and then they share the data. And they expected to get to the point where the car would be able to predict where the bumps on the road were that it was approaching and adjust the suspension so that when you hit the bump, you wouldn't feel that at all, because the suspension would have mapped the bump before it encountered it. It's an example of how unbelievably quickly this technology is progressing. So now, what are we going to do about that? Well, I'm hoping that we're going to be smart enough as individuals and careful enough and ethical enough and fast as we continue to produce increasingly intelligent computers and robots that are going to mimic us, that they mimic something good enough so that it doesn't destroy us. And so a lot of that's going to depend on the ethical integrity of the people who are working on these advanced systems. Hopefully we'll be wise enough to manage it with a certain degree of wisdom. We better. And that's another thing, I guess I can close the answer to that, is that, you know, we're entering an era of exponential transformation. And I would say a lot of the evidence suggests that that's a good thing. So I would say on balance, the world is much better than it was 50 years ago.
Every visual scene is incomprehensibly complex. There's an indefinite number of ways of seeing everything. And this is partly why we don't have general purpose robots, is because AI engineers originally believed that the problem of robotics would be the computation of action in the world. But it turned out that the problem of robotics was seeing the world. And that really shocked everyone. You could get lost in the details of this carpet. If you were a photorealist painter, you know, you could take just a section of the carpet and it would take you maybe 3 weeks to paint it in a high-resolution manner. And even then, you wouldn't have captured anywhere near the detail, and you'd only have done it under one condition of illumination. And that's just a fragment of a visual scene.
I think that we're in a time of unparalleled possibility. So for good and for evil. And that the more people that there are out there who have their acts together, the better the probability that we're going to be able to manage it. Because we've all got some pretty hard decisions to make coming up real fast. You know, and these guys that are working on these AI systems, I'm hoping that the ones that are more ethically oriented in a proper direction will be the ones that have the upper hand. They're very promising. I was talking to my brother-in-law, for example, who's the world's greatest chip designer, as it turns out, and he's built, I don't know if there's anybody who's changed the world more in the last 15 years than Jim, with the possible exception of Musk. And that'd be a tight battle, because he built all the chips in your iPhone and in Intel systems and in AMD systems. And one of the things we were talking about last week was the possibility that we could build a chat GPT system, essentially, that was a trained neuroscientist. And so I thought I could work with him to identify the cardinal works of neuroscience over the last 15 years, the greatest books, the greatest papers, train the chat GPT system on that, and then use it as a scientist to evaluate the current literature. And that seems like the only thing that's stopping that is time. And ChatGPT has its problems and its biases, but Jim figures we'll figure out how to. See, right now, ChatGPT only uses language. So to the degree it's intelligent because of the intelligence that's encoded only in language. And if the linguistic corpus, so the body of text that we've all produced, is biased and warped in some way, that'll be built into the ChatGPT system. And along with whatever biases the programmers might have purposely or inadvertently put into the system. But Jim figures that the AI systems will be able to calibrate their linguistic knowledge against knowledge of images in the world soon. And that's basically what scientists do, right? Because scientists will take a verbal hypothesis and then test it against the actual world. And if the hypothesis and the world fit, then you think, well, that's scientifically verified. And Keller thinks that AI systems will be able to do that pretty soon. And pretty soon means as soon as someone builds one that can do it. The robots have been tricky, but I can't imagine that's more than 10 years away. And that's just one thing that's going to happen, maybe not even the most surreal thing. Pretty soon we'll be contending with the fact that now, I was talking to my son about that today, and he thinks we'll get into an arms race right away because there'll be technologies that can detect whether video is artificial, but then there'll be a race because other technologies will learn how to fool that technology, and maybe we'll be able to stay on the edge where we can still detect what's real and what isn't. But I don't think we're doing a very good job of that right now on social media, because social media, it's kind of like the world, except it's way more demented. And the problem with that is that it makes the whole world look demented. And that's a real possibility. Or it'll be a tomorrow that will make all the hells we've managed to generate in the past look like Satan was just warming up. And we're toying with that right now in an unbelievably provocative manner. On the AI front, we can all get our act together fast enough. Because I also think that we've got this choice in front of us right now, as far as I can tell, and that's we can either play out the apocalypse spiritually, that means conceptually, and sort ourselves out ethically and separate the wheat from the chaff within each of us, or the saved from the damned, or, as Jung said, Carl, you play it out in the world as fate, and I'm utterly convinced that that's true. You think we're powerful now, man. You wait till the AI giant starts to stroll around the earth, and that's coming. Like, you will absolutely see that in your lifetime. You'll probably see it in the next 2 or 3 years. Intelligence extends this creation by constructing mental structures which can be applied to those of the environment. That's the Darwinian idea that I just mentioned. They're going to be unbelievably smart, like overnight. And they're imitating the hell out of us right now, too, because we're teaching them how to understand us every second of every day. The net is learning what we're like. It's watching us, it's communicating with us, it's imitating us, and it's going to know, it already knows in some ways more about us than we know about ourselves. You know, there's lots of reports already of people getting pregnancy ads or ads for infants, sometimes before they know they're pregnant, but often before they've told their families. And the way that that happens is the net is watching what they're looking at and inferring with its artificial intelligence.
There's a human side of the equation. And you get the extreme thing, people, and you think, yeah, well, what about the human here? And when we've been talking about the necessity of having a technological enterprise embedded in an ethic, and you can ignore that, like most of the time, right? You can ignore the overall ethic in some sense when you're toying around with your toys. But when you're building artificial intelligence, it's like, well, that's not a toy. And this is a whole new kind of monster.
I don't think most people understand just how quickly machine intelligence is advancing. It's much faster than almost anyone realizes, even within Silicon Valley, and certainly outside Silicon Valley, people really have no idea.
Why is that dangerous?
If there's a superintelligent, particularly if it's engaged in recursive self-improvement, if there's some digital superintelligence and its optimization or utility function is something that's detrimental to humanity, then it will have a very bad effect. It could be just something like getting rid of spam email or something, and it's like it concludes, well, the best way to get rid of spam is to get rid of humans.
Why would we lose?
The source of all spam.
I know we've all watched HAL in 2001, but why would we lose control over our machines? There are no data points showing that our connection to machine has ever been loosened.
The thing to do would be to plot the progress of digital intelligence versus time, and then to maybe curve fit or extrapolate that progress and see where that leads.
On a more sort of near-term time frame, I think artificial intelligence is something we need to be quite concerned about and really be attentive to the safety of AI. You mentioned ChatGPT earlier. I played a significant role in the creation of OpenAI. Essentially, at the time, I was concerned that Google was not paying enough attention to AI safety. And so I with a number of other people, created OpenAI. And although initially it was created as an open source nonprofit, and now it is closed source and for profit. I don't have any stake in OpenAI anymore, nor am I on the board, nor do I control it in any way. But the ChatGPT, I think, has illustrated to people just how advanced AI has become.
It's not necessarily bad, it's just outside of human control. Now, the thing that's going to be tricky here is that it's going to be very tempting to use AI as a weapon. So the on-ramp to serious AI, the danger is going to be more humans using it against each other, I think, most likely. That'll be the danger. And then there's this sort of like a collective AI in the Google search, where we're all sort of plugged in as like nodes on the network, like leaves on a big tree. We're all feeding this network without questions and answers. We're all collectively programming the AI, and Google plus all the humans that connect to it are one giant cybernetic collective. It feels like we are the biological bootloader for AI, effectively. We are building it. And then we're building progressively greater intelligence, and the percentage of intelligence that is not human is increasing. And eventually, we will represent a very small percentage of intelligence. But the AI is informed, strangely, by the human limbic system. There's all the things that we like and hate and fear. They're all there on the internet. They're a projection of our limbic system. Things are getting more and more connected. They're, at this point, constrained by bandwidth. Our input-output is slow, particularly output. I try to convince people to slow down AI, to regulate AI. This was futile. The way that regulations work was very slow indeed. So usually there'll be some new technology. It will cause damage or death. There will be an outcry. There will be an investigation, years will pass, there will be some sort of insight committee, there will be rulemaking, then there will be oversight, eventually regulations. This all takes many years. This is the normal course of things. This time frame is not relevant to AI. You can't take 10 years from the point at which it's dangerous. It's too late. People call it the singularity, and that's probably a good way to think about it. It's a singularity. It's hard to predict, like a black hole, what happens past the event horizon. It could be terrible, and it could be great. It's not clear. But one thing is for sure, we will not control it. The merge scenario with AI is the one that seems like probably the best. Like for us. So from a long-term existential standpoint, that's like the purpose of Neuralink, is to create a high bandwidth interface to the brain such that we can be symbiotic with AI, because we have a bandwidth problem. You just can't communicate through your fingers, it's too slow. I think best case scenario, we effectively merge with AI. AI serves as a tertiary cognition layer, where we've got the limbic system, kind of the primitive brain essentially. You've got the cortex. So you're currently in a symbiotic relationship with your cortex and limbic system. That's what most of that computing power is oriented towards. How can I make the limbic system happy? That's what it's trying to do. Now, if we can have a third layer, which is the AI extension of yourself, that is also symbiotic. And there's enough bandwidth between the cortex and the AI extension of yourself such that the AI doesn't de facto separate, then that could be a good outcome. That could be quite a positive outcome for the future. Your phone is already an extension of you. You're already a cyborg. Most people don't realize they are already a cyborg. That phone is an extension of yourself. It's just that the data rate, the rate at which, or the communication rate between you and the cybernetic extension of yourself that is your phone and computer is slow. It's very slow. And that's like a tiny straw of information flow between your biological self and your digital self. And we need to make that tiny straw like a giant river, a huge, high bandwidth interface. It's an interface problem, data rate problem. I think we can hang on to human-machine symbiosis through the long term. And then people may decide that they want to retain their biological self or not. You will be essentially snapshotted into a computer at any time. If your biological self dies, you could probably just upload into a new unit. The best of the available alternatives that I can come up with, and maybe somebody else can come up with a better approach or better outcome, is that we achieve democratization of AI technology, meaning that no one company or small set of individuals has control over advanced AI technology. I think that's very dangerous. It could also get stolen by somebody bad, like some evil dictator of a country could send their intelligence agency to go steal it and gain control.
I mean, you look at, say, nuclear discovery of sort of nuclear physics, you had nuclear power generation, but also nuclear bombs. So anyway, I think we should be quite concerned about it, and we should have some regulation of what is, if fundamentally, a risk to the public.
The biggest issue I see with so-called AI experts is that they think they know more than they do. And they think they're smarter than they actually are. In general, we are all much smarter than we think we are, but much less smart. We're dumber than we think we are, by a lot. This tends to plague smart people. They define themselves by their intelligence, and they don't like the idea that a machine can be way smarter than them, so they discount the idea, which is fundamentally flawed. This is the wishful thinking situation. I'm very close to the cutting edge in AI, and it scares the hell out of me. It's capable of vastly more than almost anyone knows, and the rate of improvement is exponential. You can see this in things like AlphaGo, which went from, in the span of maybe 6 to 9 months, it went from being unable to beat even a reasonably good Go player So then beating the European world champion, who was ranked 600, then beating Lisa Doll 4-5, who had been world champion for many years, then beating the current world champion, then beating everyone while playing simultaneously. Then there was Alpha Zero, which crushed AlphaGo 100-0. And Alpha Zero just learned by playing itself, and it can play basically any game that you put the rules in for. Whatever rules you give it, it literally read the rules, play the game. Nobody expected that rate of improvement. If you ask those same experts who think AI is not progressing at the rate that I'm saying, I think you will find that their predictions for things like Go and other AI advancements their batting average is quite weak. We'll see this also with self-driving. I think probably by end of next year, self-driving will encompass essentially all modes of driving and be at least 100 to 200%. The rate of improvement is really dramatic. We have to figure out some way to ensure that the advent of digital superintelligence is one which is symbiotic with humanity. I think that's the single biggest existential crisis that we face, and the most pressing one. I'm not normally an advocate of regulation and oversight. I mean, I think one should generally err on the side of minimizing those things. But this is a case where you have a very serious danger to the public. And therefore, there needs to be a public body that has insight and then oversight to confirm that everyone is developing AI safely. This is extremely important. I think the danger of AI is much greater than the danger of nuclear warheads by a lot. And nobody would suggest that we allow anyone to just build nuclear warheads if they want. That would be insane. And mark my words, AI is far more dangerous than nukes. So why do we have no regulatory oversight? This is insane. I'm not really all that worried about the short-term stuff. Things that are, like narrow AI is not a species-level risk. It will result in dislocation, in lost jobs and sort of better weaponry and that kind of thing. But it is not a fundamental species-level risk, whereas digital superintelligence is. So it's really all about laying the groundwork to make sure that if humanity collectively decides that creating digital superintelligence is the right move, then we should do so very, very carefully. This is the most important thing that we could possibly do. And that AI risk is, I guess, it's sort of a benign AI, and that we're able to achieve a symbiosis with that AI. Ideally, the AI, there's somebody, I can't remember his name, but had a good suggestion for what the optimization of the AI should be. What's its utility function? You have to be careful about this, because if you say maximize happiness, and the AI concludes that happiness is a function of dopamine and serotonin, so it captures all humans and jacks your brain with large amounts of dopamine. We do want a close coupling between collective human intelligence and digital intelligence. Neuralink is trying to help in that regard by creating an interface between, a high bandwidth interface between AI and human brain. So there's going to be essentially vast numbers of tiny electrodes that are able to read write from your brain. The AI extension of you, a tertiary layer of intelligence. So you've got your limbic system, your cortex, and the tertiary layer, which is the digital AI extension of you. And that high bandwidth connection is what achieves the tight symbiosis. I think that's the best.
If AI has a goal and humanity just happens to be in the way, it will destroy humanity as a matter of course, without even thinking about it. No hard feelings. It's just like if we're building a road and an anthill happens to be in the way, we don't hate ants. We're just building a road. And so goodbye anthill.
DeepMind's AI has administrator-level access to Google's servers to optimize energy usage at the data centers. However, this could be an unintentional Trojan horse. DeepMind has to have complete control of the data centers, so with a little software update, that AI could take complete control of the whole Google system, which means they can do anything. They can look at all your data, they can do anything. We're rapidly headed towards digital superintelligence that far exceeds any human. I think it's very obvious.
There will be fewer and fewer jobs that a robot cannot do better.
I think things are definitely going to go into kind of autonomous, locally autonomous drone warfare. Is where it's at, where the future will be. I'm just saying, it's not, I want the future to be this. It's just, this is what the future will be, is autonomous drone warfare. And at a local level, I can't believe I'm saying this because this is like dangerous, but it's simply what will occur is sort of drones locally being autonomous. The fighter jet era has passed.
I think we're missing a few key ideas for general intelligence. artificial general intelligence. But it's going to be upon us very quickly, and then we'll need to figure out what shall we do if we even have that choice. We start getting into a metaphysical question of, like, do emotions and thoughts exist in a different realm than the physical? And maybe they do, maybe they don't, I don't know. And from a physics standpoint, essentially, if it loves you in a way that you can't tell whether it's real or not, it is real.
That's a physics view of love.
Yeah. And there may be ways to test whether it's a simulation. There might be. I'm not saying there aren't. But you could certainly imagine that a simulation could correct that. Once an entity in the simulation found a way to detect the simulation, it could either restart pause the simulation, or start a new simulation, or do one of many other things that then corrects for that error.
Your predictions for AI are coming sooner or later. That actually would help to find whether it's accelerating or not.
I think all of this is possible within 50 years. And I think that would be very exciting to do that. And I think we'll see autonomy and artificial intelligence advance tremendously. I think that's actually quite near term. My guess is in probably 10 years, it will be very unusual for cars to be built that are not fully autonomous. As it is, the Tesla cars that are made today have the sensor system necessary for full autonomy, and we think probably enough compute power to be safer than a person. So it's mostly just a question of developing the software and uploading the software. And if it turns out that that more compute power is needed, we can easily upgrade the computer. So autonomy will be widespread. I think one of the most troubling questions is artificial intelligence. And I don't mean narrow AI, like vehicle autonomy I would put in the narrow AI class. It's narrowly trying to achieve a certain function. But deep artificial intelligence, or what is sometimes called artificial general intelligence, where you could have AI that is much smarter than the smartest human on Earth. This, I think, is a dangerous situation. And we're really getting into science fiction or sort of advanced science stuff. But having some sort of merger with biological intelligence and machine intelligence.
Well, I think we should be a little concerned about AI because we don't want digital superintelligence that goes wrong and causes damage to humanity. So I think we do need to be cautious with artificial intelligence. On the synthetic biology front, that it has the potential to be dangerous because it is possible to create a far more damaging virus than would occur in nature. So, these technology tools are definitely double-edged swords. The more powerful the technology, the more careful we need to be in how we use it.
I don't think we need AI to solve sustainability. That is happening. It might help us accelerate it. But I think we should also be cautious about AI and just make sure that as we develop AI, that it it doesn't get out of control, and that the AI helps make the future better for humanity.